Most people think they're living a pretty healthy life. They eat something green most days. They walk a bit. They don't smoke. They figure they're fine. A 2023 survey published in The Lancet found that 77% of adults globally rated their own health as good or excellent, while simultaneously showing markers of accelerated biological aging. 77%. But here's the thing. The habit that is aging you fastest right now is not your diet. It's not alcohol. It's not sitting at a desk. It's something so ordinary, so woven into modern life, that most people would laugh if you called it dangerous. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what that habit is, what it does to your body at a cellular level, and the precise point at which the damage becomes measurable. Because the science on this is now very clear. When most people think about aging, they think about wrinkles, gray hair, slowing down. That is surface aging. That's not what we're talking about. There is another kind of aging happening inside your body right now, biological aging, and it does not always match your birth certificate. Researchers at Duke University followed over 1,000 people from birth to their late 30s. By age 38, some participants had a biological age of 28. Others were already at 61. Same number of years alive. Completely different bodies on the inside. The primary marker they measured was telomere length. Telomeres are the protective caps on the ends of your chromosomes. Think of them like the plastic tips on shoelaces. Every time your cells divide, those caps shorten slightly. When they get too short, cells stop working properly. Fast telomere shortening equals fast aging. It's that direct. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The average person is shortening their telomeres significantly faster than they need to be, not because of genetics, but because of one daily habit that science has now tracked across 17 countries. The habit is this: chronic sleep disruption. Not just short sleep. Disrupted sleep. Inconsistent sleep. Sleep that gets pushed, pulled, interrupted, and treated as whatever is left over after everything else is done. A 2022 study in Nature Aging tracked over 7,000 adults across 2 decades. People who consistently got less than 6 hours of sleep, or who had highly irregular sleep schedules, showed biological aging that was between 8 and 12 years ahead of their chronological age. 8 to 12 years. That is not a marginal difference. That is the difference between feeling 45 and feeling 57, while your passport says 45. And here is where most people get confused. They think sleep deprivation is a badge of productivity. They think 5 hours is fine because they feel fine. But feeling fine and being fine are two completely different things. Your body doesn't send you an invoice the next day. It sends you an invoice 10 years later. And by then, the account is already overdrawn. The Harvard Medical School Sleep Division puts it plainly. Sleep is the only period in which your body performs cellular repair, memory consolidation, immune calibration, and hormonal reset, all at the same time. There is no substitute process. There is no workaround. Let me walk you through what is actually happening inside your body when you cut sleep short. In the first hour of deep sleep, your pituitary gland releases growth hormone. This hormone does not just build muscle. It repairs damaged tissue throughout your entire body, including the lining of your arteries, the cells of your gut, and the neurons in your brain. When you cut sleep to 5 or 6 hours, you dramatically reduce that repair window. The damage from the previous day, the micro-inflammation from stress, from poor food, from pollution, from just existing, stays partially unrepaired. Night after night, that unrepaired damage accumulates. Then, there is cortisol. Your cortisol levels are supposed to drop during sleep and rise naturally just before you wake. That rhythm is what allows your immune system to do its night shift work. When sleep is disrupted, cortisol stays elevated at night. Chronically elevated cortisol suppresses immune function, promotes fat storage around the organs, and directly accelerates telomere shortening. A study from San Francisco found that people sleeping fewer than 6 hours had 4 times the risk of catching a cold when exposed to the virus, not because of their immune system's overall strength, but because sleep disruption had impaired its response speed. 4 times. From sleep alone. And the brain. Neuroscientist Matthew Walker at Berkeley has spent his career studying this. His research shows that during deep sleep, the brain activates a cleaning system called the glymphatic system that flushes out metabolic waste, including the amyloid plaques associated with Alzheimer's disease. That system is almost entirely inactive when you're awake. Miss the sleep. Miss the cleaning. Year after year. Here is the number I want you to hold in your mind. 1 in 3 adults in the developed world is not getting the sleep they need. That is the figure from the World Health Organization, and it has not improved in 20 years. In countries like the UK, the US, South Korea, and Japan, average sleep duration has dropped by almost 90 minutes per night compared to 60 years ago. 90 minutes gone every night. That is not a small shift. If a medication caused 90 minutes less of a critical biological process every night, we would call it a health emergency. But because the mechanism is invisible, because the consequences arrive slowly, and because staying up late feels like a choice, not a disease, we keep treating it like a lifestyle preference. It is not a preference. At the cellular level, it is damage. Now here is where this gets really interesting, because so far we've talked about sleep in terms of hours, in terms of duration. But duration is only half the story. The part most people completely miss, even people who think they're sleeping well, is what researchers call sleep architecture. The structure of your sleep. What's happening inside those hours. And this is where the real damage is hiding. Your sleep is not one continuous state. It moves through cycles, roughly 90 minutes each, and each cycle contains different stages: light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep. Deep sleep, also called slow-wave sleep, is where physical restoration happens. This is when your cells repair, your immune system consolidates its response, and your growth hormone is released. REM sleep is where emotional regulation and memory processing happen. It's also where your brain strengthens the neural pathways you used during the day. Here is the critical fact. You get the most deep sleep in the first half of the night. You get the most REM sleep in the second half. Which means if you consistently sleep from 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. instead of 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., same total hours, you are almost entirely cutting out your deep sleep. You're keeping the hours on paper. But you're losing the most restorative part of the cycle. This is what researchers call sleep timing misalignment, and it's one of the most common hidden causes of accelerated aging in otherwise healthy adults. A paper published in JAMA Network Open in 2023 found that adults with irregular sleep timing, even when total sleep duration was adequate, had significantly higher markers of cardiovascular inflammation, metabolic disruption, and cognitive decline. Your body runs on a circadian clock. Every organ has its own timing. Your liver expects to process differently at 2 a.m. than at 2 p.m. Your immune system has a schedule. Your hormones have a schedule. When your sleep is irregular, when Monday you sleep at 10 p.m. and Friday you sleep at 2 a.m., you are effectively putting your body through repeated jet lag without ever leaving the country. And jet lag is not just tiredness. It is a full-body disruption. Now imagine doing that every week, every month, for years. Let's be honest about why this happens. It's not because people don't know sleep is important. Almost everyone knows sleep is important. It happens because the world is designed to keep you awake. Your phone emits blue light that suppresses melatonin, the hormone that signals your body to prepare for sleep. Netflix autoplays the next episode. Social media is engineered to reward one more scroll. Work cultures celebrate people who answer emails at midnight. And underneath all of that is something more psychological. Sleep feels unproductive. In a culture that celebrates output, lying still for 8 hours feels like waste. It feels passive. It feels like something you can trade away for an extra hour of work, or a show, or some quiet time that is finally yours after a loud day. That feeling is understandable. It is also one of the most expensive decisions you make. Because the hour you steal from sleep at night does not disappear. It reappears in reduced concentration the next day, in slower emotional recovery, in food cravings driven by elevated ghrelin, in inflammation that lingers longer than it should. You don't feel it immediately. But the compounding is relentless. Think of it like this. Imagine you borrowed a small amount of money every day from a fund that was also keeping your health reserves stable. You'd barely notice the daily withdrawal. But over 10 years, the account would look very different. That is sleep debt, not a metaphor, an actual, measurable biological deficit. Now, let's zoom out. The World Health Organization has declared sleep deprivation a global public health epidemic. That word, epidemic, is normally reserved for infectious disease. They used it for sleep. In the UK, the Sleep Council estimates that poor sleep costs the economy approximately £40 billion annually. In the United States, the Rand Corporation put the figure at over $410 billion per year. But here's the number that tells the human story most clearly. A meta-analysis published in Sleep Medicine Reviews looked at 35 studies covering over 2 million adults. People with short or disrupted sleep had a 12% higher all-cause mortality risk than people who slept 7 to 9 hours consistently. Not higher cancer risk, not higher heart disease risk, higher risk of dying from any cause. And the threshold was not extreme. It kicked in below 7 hours. 7 hours. That is the line. Surveys across the UK, US, Australia, and Pakistan consistently show that between 35 and 45% of adults are sleeping 6 hours or less on weeknights. Nearly half the adult population sitting on the wrong side of that line. Here is what gives me genuine confidence. Unlike some health threats that require years of effort to reverse, the science on sleep shows measurable improvement in biological markers within weeks of changing sleep behavior. A study from the University of Chicago found that extending sleep from under 6 hours to 7.5 hours for just 2 weeks led to measurable reductions in inflammatory markers, specifically CARP and interleukin-6, two of the most reliable indicators of accelerated biological aging. 2 weeks. Measurable. That is not a slow process. Telomere health takes longer, but the cascade of damage that shortens telomeres, the cortisol dysregulation, the oxidative stress, the immune suppression, those all begin to stabilize within days of consistent, well-timed sleep. The single most impactful thing is your wake time, not your bedtime. Your wake time. Pick a time to wake up and protect it, every day, including weekends. This anchors your circadian rhythm, which then regulates when melatonin rises, when cortisol drops, and when your body knows it is safe to begin the deep repair cycle. Everything else, light exposure, meal timing, exercise timing, synchronizes around that anchor. Researchers at Brigham and Women's Hospital found that consistent wake time was a stronger predictor of metabolic health and cognitive performance than either total sleep duration or bedtime consistency alone. The wake time. That single variable. Your sleep window should be 7 to 9 hours. For most adults, 8 is optimal. 7 is the floor. Below that, you are making withdrawals from an account that cannot sustain it. Your sleep schedule should be consistent within a 30-minute window, meaning you wake within 30 minutes of the same time every day. Your light environment matters. Bright, natural light in the morning, ideally within 30 minutes of waking, outdoors if possible, is one of the most powerful circadian anchors known to research. Then, In the 90 minutes before sleep, reducing screen brightness and overhead lighting signals the system to begin its wind down. Your bedroom temperature should be between 16 and 19 degrees Celsius. Core body temperature needs to drop by 1 to 2 degrees for the brain to initiate deep sleep. Caffeine has a half-life of approximately 5 to 7 hours in most adults. A coffee at 2 p.m. still has half its caffeine in your bloodstream at 8 p.m. Many people who say they sleep fine on caffeine are simply not accessing the deep sleep stages their brain is trying to reach. None of these are difficult changes, but consistency is where most people fail, not because they don't know, but because they don't treat sleep with the same non-negotiable urgency as a work meeting or a meal. We have built a culture that treats exhaustion as evidence of effort, where saying I only got 5 hours is almost a status signal, where rest feels like it needs to be earned. But the biology does not care about the culture. Your cells do not respond to hustle. Your telomeres do not reward late nights. Your glymphatic system does not care whether you were productive until midnight or watching television. The repair either happens or it doesn't. The people who age most slowly are not the ones who discovered some exotic supplement or biohacking protocol. They are the ones who for decades treated their sleep as seriously as their work, as seriously as their relationships. Sleep is not the passive part of your day. It is the active part. The part where the real maintenance happens. The rest of your day is just what happens in between sleep cycles. That is not an exaggeration. That is how your biology works. Let me close every loop I opened at the start. The habit that ages you fastest is not a dramatic one. It's not a poison or a disease. It is the slow, daily decision to treat your sleep as optional, to push it later, cut it shorter, and accept its disruption as the normal cost of a busy life. The data from The Lancet, from Nature Aging, from San Francisco, from Harvard, from the World Health Organization, all of it points to the same mechanism. Chronic sleep disruption accelerates biological aging by between 8 and 12 years. It shortens telomeres, elevates cortisol, suppresses immune function, and impairs the brain's only cleaning cycle. And it is almost entirely reversible if you start now and you're consistent. The one thing I want you to take from this is not a routine, not a supplement, not an app. It is a decision. Decide on a wake time, the same time tomorrow as the weekend, the same time this week as next month. Make that non-negotiable and let everything else organize around it. That one anchor changes the entire system. Which leaves one question I'm not going to answer for you. If you already know sleep matters, and most people do, what is the actual reason you keep treating it like it doesn't?